Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 29 of Shanalytics here on Victory Monday after a 17-11 victory over the Philadelphia Eagles. Vinny, what's up? How you doing, man? I know we were just talking. I was complaining about my Florida State Seminoles having to cover that football team. But you know what? Let's talk about much happier things. The 49ers just won over the Eagles the other day. Like I said, 17-11 close victory. We'll get into all that, and we'll talk about the quarterbacks. We'll talk about Debo. We'll talk about Brandon Ayuk. We'll talk about a lot. But man, how are you doing on this Victory Monday?
Good. Yeah, you can't really complain too much on a victory Monday. Any way they can win, if it's even 3 or 2-0, I don't care as long as the 49ers are getting wins. That's all that matters. And even seeing the other teams in the division, Seahawks went down yesterday, but this is the division is as advertised. They are the best
Yeah,
division in football, and I had said yesterday was the kind of like the permit test for the 49ers.
right.
And this week it's going to be the ultimate driver's test
Yeah,
against a very good Green Bay team. Let's see how they do tonight. But I mean, even then, if they were to win or lose, that Green Bay game is going to be really big. So, doing good. Victory Monday. Can't complain. At least you have a football team to root for. Gonzaga doesn't have a football team. Closest thing we
uh,
have is Wazoo, and Wazoo. Well, there's Wazoo, like Eastern, all those schools. Yeah, Eastern Washington, home of Kendrick Bourne and Cooper Cup. But Wazoo just got destroyed this past weekend, so I don't really know if it's even worth talking about.
well, yeah, and I was gonna say, your school Gonzaga and Florida State both have the same amount of wins in football this year. So
We've been undefeated since 1949, baby.
oh yeah, undefeated for sure. But let's talk about the first topic of the day, and I wanted to start here not because I'm a antagonist, but man, we gotta talk about this first. Why didn't Trey Lance play versus the Philadelphia Eagles? This one to me. I don't know if this is something I'm gonna hang on to too much, and by the end of the season I'll be complaining like, oh, they should have played Trey here, they should have played Trey there. The 49ers won. Jimmy Garoppolo was playing well, and I think honestly Jimmy did enough to stave off Trey Lance, especially at the end of that first half. I feel like we're getting closer to halftime. The Eagles had a 3-0 lead on the 49ers, right? And things were getting a little shaky with Jimmy Garoppolo. He hadn't scored yet. He didn't look great, but then he put together that great 2-minute drive where he gets the touchdown, I believe, to Juwan Jennings on that one.
Yeah.
And at that point in the game, Vinny, I just wanted to say this. Like, I was really starting to think that the 49ers might put in Trey Lance. They might have to put him in for a package. There's something they're going to have to do to try and potentially flip this game. So I guess, are you surprised that Trey Lance didn't play at all on Sunday? And were there any instances where you thought he should have been inserted into the game?
At this point, no. I don't. I wasn't really too shocked. Obviously, you wanted to see him play, but like you mentioned, they're winning games, and as Kyle Shanahan shown and has shown, like he's like not just with his quarterback but other positions, he's gonna put the guys out there that give him the best position to win. And maybe Trey Lance is that guy in the future, but clearly in the first 2 weeks he hasn't done enough or hasn't shown enough to prove that. I think though at the same time there are situations where he could have played and he could have seen a bit more playing time. But no, I didn't have too much of an issue, and I wasn't really too shocked about Trey not playing at all yesterday. Um, I was a, I think Jimmy was. There were a few throws like he was a little jittery at first, definitely, and he wasn't great to
I,
start the game, and
Yeah,
he
I think
looked like a little.
that Eagles pass rush got to him early
Yeah,
on,
and he looked
and
like and he
they
looked like
really startled him.
Jimmy. Yeah, he looked like Jimmy week 1 against Arizona.
Right.
In the beginning of that game, but towards the end of it, he really started to settle down. He made that big throw to Debo to get the yards after the catch, and ultimately he did enough to put the team in the best position to win. But yeah, I just think, and I think there's going to be that switch at some point in the season this year. It's just a matter of when. And these first two games were games that the 49ers should have and did win, and they could have done it with either guy. So it wasn't really like, and the 49ers weren't really in panic station either throughout the game. They seemed to have a pretty comfortable hold. I mean, especially given how well the defense played. So I think yeah, I didn't really have much issue or with Trey not playing. And, I think he didn't play ultimately because, they weren't in need of Trey. They didn't need him to win yesterday. Like, they didn't need him in order for them to win.
Now, I'll agree with you there that they didn't need Trey to win necessarily, but I guess I'm more questioning this is that, and you mentioned it right before you just ended right there, is that 49ers looked like they could have won with Trey Lance starting the game potentially anyways. I mean, it's not like they ran the ball particularly well anyways. I believe around 3 yards per carry for the entire team. So I understand not wanting to put Trey Lance in a bad position, especially in a game that's as close as this, where if Trey Lance makes a really bad play or there's a turnover, he could potentially lose the game. But then if you know that if that's where you're at with Trey Lance, why not get him some game experience running the ball? That's the question I have. The 49ers are struggling so much already. They should have gotten him a little more involved, at least in the red zone, maybe. I just don't think this offense was running the ball well enough to keep him off the field. That's the issue I have more. It's not that, they should have played Trey the entire game or anything. It's, just looking at how the Raiders, for example, were reacting to Trey Lance in the red zone when they had, Mostert coming across, when they had Sermon coming across in the preseason. They were able to freeze linebackers. They were able to keep defenses on their heels and take this running game to a whole nother level. And this is what we've been talking about all offseason. So for Kyle not to take full advantage of that, I do have some issue with that. But I will say it does seem like this might be the last game where we see no Trey Lance. At least I think so.
Yeah, yeah, and I think these
just look at the schedule coming up, Vinny. If they play the way they've played these last few games, they can't beat
and I think
Arizona
that's
Seattle with Trey on the bench.
Yeah, and I think that's part of my point too. It's gonna come, and I think these first two games are important in the sense that they had to win those games and they did, but also these next few games are really going to be big indicators as to whether or not they make the move sooner or later to Trey Lance. And it'll be I don't know. It's kind of like it's a tough situation because say they go 2 out of 3 in these next 3 games, you go into your bye week 4-1. Do you make the switch then, or you're 4-1 and especially winning against the Arizona looks like one of the best teams in the league right now. Seattle, I know they lost, but they are still Seattle, and they always give the Niners trouble. And then you talk about Green Bay, who their next game is, who they've had the most success with over the past 2 years, but nevertheless, it's still Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur and a different defensive coordinator that you're attacking, but we'll be getting into him a little later. But it's a tricky situation, and I think again, that move is going to come. It's going to come. He's going to play and he's going to start this year, and there's going to be a point where he takes over. I just don't know when that will be and when Kyle is ready to make that move. And I agree with you too. I think this is the first and last game we don't see Trey Lance playing. I would be shocked if he didn't play next week, especially against a bigger opponent. And kind of like what I mentioned too, I think with those mistakes against those bad teams, they're not as good teams, I guess, with if he were to play yesterday and he had struggled, then there would be a little bit more eyebrows raised because you would expect him to win those games. Whereas if you put him in these games against really good teams, you can have a little bit more of an understanding as to why he struggled, especially with in that Arizona game, especially Like,
Yeah.
that defense is looking really good. I know they gave up 33 to the Vikings yesterday, but
No, that
like
Arizona
it's
team looks
yeah, and it's just a
dangerous.
tough line to kind of cross, and I think that move will be made soon, and yeah.
Yeah, I know the move will be made soon. I hear you on that, and like I just said, I really think this is the last game where we see no Trey Lance. But I think moving forward, the concern I have is that you look at the offense with Jimmy. To me, I don't know about you, Vinny, but he looks as confident as I've seen Jimmy look.
Oh yeah,
He looks
yeah,
excellent, but even with Jimmy being so excellent, in my mind, I think right now he's maximizing his talent and he's maximizing this offense within the confines of it. But that's the problem, Vinny, is that this offense looks so slow and methodical, and you don't see these big chunk plays. Whereas with Trey, that's what he's bringing, and that's the upside he's bringing, and that's why it's so attractive to play Trey Lance moving forward. It's that because even at his very best, Jimmy Garoppolo is still limiting the 49ers. That's the problem, is that the 49ers have done their evaluation of Jimmy, and they know that even if they're getting every drop that they can out of Jimmy Garoppolo, if they're maximizing his potential the most they can, clearly the organization thinks that he can't take them to the next level. So in my mind, you're gonna have to make this Trey Lance move at some point, and I
yeah,
really hope it's sooner rather than later. And I hope this isn't an issue where it lingers on into week 10, week 11, week 12 to the point where 49ers fans start convincing themselves that, hey, Jimmy Garoppolo can start in 2020 for the 49ers or 2022. That's where I think things become really dicey because you have
yeah,
this organization, this team, this from 2019, right, that is so focused on the fact that they were there. They were so close. They were almost champions. They feel it was cheated away from them. But at the same time, there's a reason that the 49ers are moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo. There's a reason they brought in Trey Lance. And I hope this isn't an issue. I hope this is a thing where, right, they've played two really bad teams. Like you were saying, they don't want to unleash the full Trey Lance offense. And Jimmy Garoppolo is playing so well that you can't quite bench him yet, right? That's, I
yeah,
think, where they're at. I just hope that it's not another situation where maybe Trey Lance isn't who they thought they were, or who the 49ers thought he was. To me, that's the really scary situation, is that maybe the 49ers have had Trey Lance in-house, and maybe he isn't quite what they thought he was going to be by week one. So I think the 49ers are doing this the right way, and I think they're in a situation, right, like I said, where Jimmy's playing well enough, and you don't want to quite step on the toes of the team. You don't want to just insert Trey as the starter just to do it. And Jimmy's just playing so well, you can't really bench him yet.
yeah,
That's my
yeah, and
assessment of the
yeah, no,
situation.
and that's credit to Jimmy too. He does,
Absolutely.
he does look a little more like 2017 Jimmy, like in those last games, especially with his like
You
he's
know
not
what it
getting.
is, Vinny? He's not trying to protect himself the way he has been the last few years.
No,
He's
no,
been willing
exactly.
to get hit. To
Yeah,
you
and
saw the quarterback sneaks. He scrambled a few
yeah,
times. This is a
yeah,
Jimmy
that
Garoppolo
was
playing
exactly.
without a regard for his body, right?
Yeah, that was exactly my point, and I think the mobility is a lot different from 2020, and and even 2019. I think we haven't seen he wasn't that mobile.
No,
Like, and you saw he
no.
was evading, like he was evading pressure. He was standing in there, gunslinging like he did in 2017, not afraid to make those throws. Um, while at the same time doing what he's asked, and like again, he still missed some wide open receivers that he should have hit, but
Yeah,
quarterbacks are going to have that every week, and there's going to be a few throws. A little, I want a little bit of less. I want like 2 or 3, not as much as like 4 or 5, but um, but yeah, he's really showing up. And the tricky thing too about you talk about inserting Trey Lance. What if you play Garoppolo for too long, and he's doing well in these first 2 games, right? But what if there's that one game, because you see teams that are other teams in the NFL that are losing their quarterbacks or aren't as secure with their quarterback positions, maybe looking to find something different, get a little jolt out of their defense, like Jacob Eason. right?
got
He
inserted.
went into the game for the Colts yesterday, and like if I'm like, and it kept it close, but like if Carson Wentz was in that game, you feel a lot more comfortable, right? But he got hurt, so what do you do there? And then we talked about Washington before. That could be like,
Miami
do
might
they
need a
really,
quarterback.
yeah, Miami exactly. So like, do you try and risk, selling him high now, or do you and like get that trade value back, or and willing to risk, maybe not as much production on the field, or do you keep Garoppolo on the field knowing how well he's played and risk, him getting hurt or him not having as good, doing anything essentially to lower his trade value? That's kind of the tricky thing that they're kind of facing right now. But I think, yeah, I think they're doing what they can with the situation. I think they're handling it well. I think, again, it's a lot easier decision if Jimmy doesn't play as well.
Right.
And they
Jimmy
make
really
that switch.
hasn't turned the ball over since that first
And
birthday
yeah,
start
yeah,
at that
yeah.
level,
Except for
right?
that, he hasn't thrown a pick yet. Like,
No, no.
and that's something that's good, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and
you don't want.
even as bad as he looked in the first two, really three series against Philly, you're right. He hasn't thrown an interception yet. And I don't think he's made any catastrophic mistake to the point where you feel like
No,
he lost a game for the 49ers, which is why the 49ers are moving on from him, is because he had so many games like that. He's had so many situations where he quite literally loses the game and flips the script.
yeah,
So I think it's a great question in terms of the trade value, in terms of them being able to walk the line with the quarterback. It's incredible what the 49ers have been doing so far. Honestly, I don't think anyone would have really predicted this so far. It is
yeah.
very
And it's
strange.
kind of a win-win for the team too, because they're winning
Oh,
games,
yeah.
and like that's the ultimate goal of the team.
Short term, at least, it looks good right now. I will say that. I still question how this is going to affect Trey long term, but I think for the now they're handling it well. But again, I think
Yeah,
there's a
we'll
lot of
see.
stuff
We'll see.
inside the
We'll see.
building that we
Yeah.
don't quite know about. But let's talk about Jimmy Garoppolo a little bit more. I do want to finish off this quarterback topic with this, and we don't have to spend too much time on it. But I guess, how much longer do you think Jimmy Garoppolo should be the 49ers starting quarterback? And I think we all have this imagination or this idea, right? Of, oh, they're gonna wait until the bye week or wait until Jimmy messes up or something like that. I guess. Do you think there's an expiration date for Jimmy?
I don't know, honestly. Like, I think there is a situation where he does play the whole year.
Yeah,
And that's not like, especially if they do keep winning. Like, I don't know about 2022 yet. We haven't gotten there yet, but there is a situation this year where he does play every game, and Trey doesn't see the field. But I don't know, like, and it's a tough thing because like that bye week is like a good, that's 2 weeks of prep for Trey for that first game, which I think is a Sunday night game against Indy. And,
right.
we don't know the level of Carson Wentz. We don't know how severe his injury is. We don't know how long he's out for. Because if he's out for that game on that Sunday night, first off, I don't even know if it'd be a Sunday night game anymore. They'd probably
Yeah, they,
flex
they,
it out.
they'd reschedule that for sure.
Yeah. Or so maybe that gives him a little more confidence. Or maybe you go next week, week 8 against Chicago in Chicago. Justin Fields v. Trey Lance. Maybe that's a good spot for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, how much longer should he be the starter? I think once they have like nothing else like left, like it's ultimately going to be up to Kyle, and it's going to be, once Kyle is like, okay, like I think it's time now. And if maybe it's within these next few weeks, maybe it's not. I think it's more likely post bye, rather than pre bye week, because I just don't know how that affects your development. Starting him for 3 games, having him take a week off, and then going back into the flow of it. I don't know how safe or whatever the situation is. I don't know how how that affects his development in any way. Maybe that helps him, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I think it's more likely if they do it, they got to do it sooner rather than later. Like, so if you don't do it this week or next week, like, I don't think they should put him in at the Arizona game. I don't think they should start him that game just because that's a week you're playing, a bye week, and then you're
I
playing
don't
again.
I don't think they should necessarily start him any of these next 3 games, quite frankly. I mean, the
I
way
think
I
it's I think it's better post.
I think it's better post-bye, but I also don't think it's a situation of the bye or the timing of some of this stuff. I think the teams he's playing against certainly matter, Vinny, but I guess for me, the thing I'm gonna be looking for is when does Jimmy Garoppolo make that mistake, right? I think once Jimmy Garoppolo starts making mistakes enough to where it feels like he could lose the game for the team, right? Or to where it's clear that he's making, rookie type mistakes that even Trey Lance might still be making. They would have to put in Trey Lance at some point. That's the tough thing is that they might run into one of these games, right? Against Green Bay, Seattle, they might be down 2 scores or something. Jimmy Garoppolo might have just thrown a pick six or an interception that leads to another score. They might be sitting at them, staring at themselves down 2 scores at home against Green Bay or Seattle or Arizona and decide, you know what, we want to actually go and try and win this game. And we know Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to push us any further than he's already pushed us. I really think Jimmy Garoppolo has a short leash in my mind. He just hasn't quite tugged on it as much as he should have, right? He hasn't made those mistakes that we expect from Jimmy that we've been hearing about all training camp from reporters and all kinds of stuff, really. So I think with Jimmy and Trey, Jimmy's going to start as long as he's not making those mistakes. As long as he's not making those rookie mistakes that we've seen him make before, he's going to continue to be the starting quarterback. And even then, if he does make some of those rookie mistakes, it would have to be so much to the point where the 49ers feel threatened as if they're losing a game because of what Jimmy does, right? So I feel like that's the situation where Trey comes in and then he becomes the starter and then he takes over.
Yeah, and it's not even like we're not saying Trey Lance shouldn't be getting snaps during these next few games. That's not what we're saying here. He should be getting snaps, and he's going to get snaps. Maybe we'd like to see a little bit more than 4, but he's going to get his snaps. And we're not saying here that he shouldn't be on the field these next 3 games. We're just saying it's a tough situation if you put him in before the bye week, and because he gets into a flow of things, like even players all the time, like it takes him a few games to get adjusted, let alone a quarterback as raw as Trey Lance. But imagine he hits a stride week 3, then you have to go to your bye week, and then that stride isn't the same going into week 7. So I think, and if they're in blowout situations, why not? Why not play him and why not start him? And if you do, it has to get bad. It has to be a terrible, terrible game for them to make the switch before the
just
bye
look
week.
at the Lions game. I mean, they didn't even insert Trey Lance when they were up that much, right? And it felt like that game had been put away already. So there's clearly some restraint with playing Trey Lance, or at least in these first 2 games. Now, I wonder this, Vinny. Do you think this is a symptom of them playing the Lions and the Eagles, or is it a symptom of Jimmy Garoppolo playing so well, or maybe even both?
It's both. I think like I said this last week, I think they know they could win with either quarterback
right now.
In week 1, it's week 1. I don't really
well, the Lions are
and the
Lions
Lions
are one of the worst organizations in all of
so
football.
it would have gone haywire either way. If he played well against the Lions, it's okay, he played the Lions. If he played bad, then everyone would want they should have to Justin Fields, all that. So it's I don't know. It's so early into the season. I think someone mentioned in the comments earlier, I think these next 3 games are going to be really telling, are really going to be the test as to when they make that move. Now we've obviously been a little selfish about it. We want to see Trey as much as we can as soon as possible. But if they're winning games, don't mess up that winning streak. You ultimately, we're 49ers fans, right? We want to see the 49ers win as many games as possible. And so that's kind of where I'm at it right now. I'm kind of I'm just like, it's gonna happen soon. I just don't know when. I'm just kind of just going along with the ride at this point. I'm not really stressing about it too much, just because it's like, I don't know. First, it's kind of draining just talking about it all the time, and especially how long we've been talking about it. And yeah, I'm just just going with the flow with it. Just hope they can win.
Yeah, and let me just end on this with Jimmy. I think he'll continue to be the starter for a little bit more, but I really do believe in this theory that they're essentially just waiting for Jimmy to fail, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah,
It feels like a situation where rather than having Trey Lance just outright win the job from Jimmy, you kind of have to have Jimmy lose the job in order for the team to really fully believe in Trey and believe in what they're doing with Trey, right? You can't
yeah,
just
and they're comfortable.
hand it
Yeah,
over.
yeah, and they're comfortable doing that because if these Jimmy's playing well, they're winning games,
Yeah.
right? And then you can make that switch when you can, but he's not playing as well.
Yep, for sure. And they'll certainly have some opponents coming up where Jimmy will have his opportunities to make mistakes for sure if he's not too careful. But Vinny, let's talk about the 49ers offense a little bit, and let's talk about this Eagles game. So I guess for you, after exiting that game, right, only 11 points, 3 something yards per carry. They didn't have many huge explosive plays, pretty much besides that, the few Debo Samuel catches. What's your biggest takeaway from the 49ers offense?
I love how they're using Debo Samuel. I think 2019 it was a lot more, and last year it was a lot more reverses, a lot more with him in the running game. But this year we're seeing a lot more of him running routes and him being that traditional wide receiver, which is really starting to pay off. You've seen like he's had like 100-yard game and he had a 93-yard game yesterday. Both getting touchdowns. Wait, he didn't score a touchdown yesterday, did he? Or he did? No, he didn't.
No, he didn't.
No, no, no. But still, uh, but yeah, I think Trey's a big takeaway. The biggest though is it's only 2 games, but Mike Quincy's playing really well. He is showing up this year, and he is really stepping up to the table. I think he only allowed on 60 snaps. He only allowed 2 pressures, which is a lot better than what we saw last year. And I think it's
Especially
just
against that Eagles front. That Eagles
yeah,
front is better than the
yeah,
Green
and
Bay
that's just the continuity that we're seeing from the offensive line. Yeah, they kind of struggled a little bit yesterday, but I think you see how important too Alex Mack is to this offensive line. Actually having a center, someone who plays center, no surprise there, right? It's weird to think that if you have an actual center playing center, your offensive line is going to be better, right? Like so. Yeah, and Brunskill struggled a little bit yesterday. There was one play where he kind of got blown off the line a little bit, but I think I was against Fletcher Cox or Hargraves, who had a really good game yesterday too. Like 2 great, really good interior guys. So, yeah, ultimately, I think I'm really liking what I'm seeing from the offensive line so far. Jimmy's not getting hit as much, and their run blocking wasn't as good yesterday, but you can see that this offensive line is in my opinion the best in the division.
Yeah, I think the offensive line is looking good. They're looking much improved from last year. I guess for me, my biggest takeaway on offense is that this offense is good, but they're not dynamic enough to consistently beat the Green Bays and Seattles and Arizonas. I think what's holding the 49ers back on offense right now is the fact that they have to work within the confines of the Jimmy Garoppolo offense. They can only do so much with this quarterback style, with the style of offense that Kyle wants to play. And I think, moving forward, they can score a lot of points on teams, sure, but Vinny, if they can only get 3 yards per carry running the ball, I don't know how this offense is going to be able to beat those hard hitters in the NFC, the really great teams in the NFC. And I think, it's It's an issue of the offensive line didn't look great yesterday. And the fact that outside of Debo Samuel, who's their next receiving threat? I mean, where's George Kittle been this entire time? I think he's had like 3 or 4 catches total this season through 2 games. So the fact that they have to rely on Debo so much, I think is a bit of a problem actually, because once you do play Seattle, once you do play the Rams, once you do play Arizona, they're going to find better ways to defend Debo Samuel than the Eagles and the Lions have. And I think they'll do a much better job taking away what he's been doing so well against these teams in the first 2 weeks. So I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that their offense is good, not great. And until they play Trey Lance or they start him, I don't think that's going to change, because I don't think it can, because of Jimmy Garoppolo, because of the limitations he has. It's just, it's not that he's like bad or anything, or it's just that he doesn't have the skill set to be able to operate outside of what the offense looks like right now. And that limits the team, because other teams are later into the season, they're going to ask Jimmy Garoppolo to throw downfield. I think, quite honestly, the Eagles and the Lions didn't do a good enough job game planning against the Jimmy Garoppolo offense. So I think once we see teams better game plan against the 49ers offense, once we see Jimmy Garoppolo maybe not have as great as pass protection as he's had in these last 2 games, I really worry about this team's ability to score a lot of points and have, big explosive plays. That's really the issue for me, is that we see so few explosive plays, and when we do see them, it's a lot of yards after the catch with Debo.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot of that type of stuff.
Yeah, that's where I see most of the yards after the catch. It's not a lot of, and you saw a little bit of, he was trying to make those throws, like he was making, throws 10, 15, 20 yards down the field. He was just missing them, and you kind of need to hit those. And
look at the Ayuk one, the Ayuk one, where Ayuk it's I think it's either that first or second drive, right? It's on 3rd down, 3rd and 10. Ayuk is running a deep post over the middle, 15 yards, and he just completely overthrew him.
And there was the one even before where it was Sanu. Sanu was open too.
That was the next one I was going to bring it up.
Because Kyle's dialing up these plays up, and these receivers like you say that these receivers are open every time. They are actually open almost all the time.
Yeah,
it's just you just gotta hit it, and he's not hitting those throws, and so that's where I think some of it is a little bit lost in translation. Like the plays are there, those maybe it's not like your traditional 25, 30, 40-yard bomb that you're throwing, but like those like 15, 20, bigger chunk plays are open. It's just Garoppolo just has to make those. He has to make those throws, and he didn't as much yesterday, but he did make the big ones where it was especially the one to Debo with his yards after catch. Like he showed up in that moment.
Right, and I think with Jimmy and the offense, right, it's just this isn't something that's going to change. I mean, of 22 completions he had yesterday, 8 of them were behind the line of scrimmage for Jimmy. So this isn't something that's surprising or new, right? This is just the 49ers offense. And I think really what we're seeing now is more of a frustration out of Kyle and Jimmy working together, because they can only take it so far, because I don't think their skill sets and what Jimmy wants to do and what he can do and what Kyle wants to do and what he can do, they just don't match up, and it's not a great marriage. And I think for the 49ers moving forward on offense, they can put together good offensive games. They can score a lot of points on teams, but I really worry about their ability if they're down 7, 8 minutes left in the game, 4th quarter, kind of like what we saw that Sunday night, game last night. I don't know if they have the offensive firepower to just deliver blow to blow, with the Green Bays of the world.
Yeah.
They
have the player. Yeah, I think they have the players to do it. It's just
they have the playmakers. They don't have the quarterback to execute it.
Well, and part of it too, because like Kittle's really good, and Juszczyk is good, and some of the running backs, they seem to always work somehow in some way, and we know about Debo, and Sherfield's been showing up, and Ayuk, Ayuk is good. He's really good, and we'll get into Ayuk in a minute, but yeah, it's just I think it's just part of it's the quarterback, and part of it is just it's got to be a little bit taxing on Kyle sometimes to just week in and week out do like a lot more extra work to make sure that the game plan is working. And it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But they have the talent to do it. It just has to all come together. And again, I think these next 3 weeks are going to be really good indicators of where they're at and where they're going to go as an offense.
For sure. And I don't want to spend too much time on offense there. Let's talk about what honestly was the best part of this 49ers team yesterday. Let's talk about DeMeco Ryans and that defense, Vinny. They were excellent, really, yesterday in defending the Eagles, not in terms of the big explosive plays, but in terms of stopping scores. The 49ers were excellent in the red zone. Tart had that incredible play on that long 91-yard catch that Lenore gave up. I guess what's your biggest takeaway from defense? They only allowed 11 points versus the Eagles. But I will say Eagles they had 5 yards per carry. And honestly, while DeMeco looked really good, he made great adjustments. I feel like part of this is due to the Eagles not adjusting on the fly well enough and not committing to the run and not committing to the zone read with Jalen Hurts, which they did look successful with later in the game once they were able to get rolling a little bit. But it was a little too much too late with that. But I guess sorry, Vinny, for you.
No, you're good. You're good. Real quick, I just saw that throw. I was just looking on Twitter here and I saw that Ayuk throw, and he was open.
He was wide open.
He was open. My biggest takeaway on the defense, Nick Bosa. Jeez, he looked like he played last year. He looks like he hasn't skipped a beat, and he got 2 sacks. I think he got 2 sacks yesterday. He's gone, I think 3 on the year.
Yeah, 3 pressures yesterday, 2 sacks off of that.
And you can see why. Obviously the investment in the pick is going to pay off. Like, it's a number 2 pick, but you can see the difference that he makes on that defense, even without like kind of like the same way Trey Lance could be for Kyle Shanahan. I think a lot of the defensive pressure last year was a lot given to Robert Saleh without Nick Bosa there. And a lot of it was more of him trying to find creative ways to get pressure and get those attack. But whereas you can just plug Bosa in and what you're going to get from him, and you're going to, he allows you to do other things to where you're not doing as much work and getting pressure on the defensive line.
Yeah.
And Bosa was just,
I think Bosa he's been, and Ford. Let's give credit.
And this is Rusty Bosa. Like, like he hasn't played in a year, and he's looking like he has, and he played last year. So Bosa has just been, I think he's been outstanding so far. And you hope he can, keep it up, because he is going to be one of the reasons why, the 49ers are to make a Super Bowl run, or, really contend with every single team every single week, is because Bosa's on that defensive line. So Bosa, for me, like, obviously it's easy to say Lenore and the corners, and obviously, and I guess another one that I have, the safeties were the best players on the field yesterday. Jaquaski Tart and Jimmy Ward were outstanding.
I think they single-handedly had a couple plays where they probably won the game.
Yeah, Tart ran down.
91 yard.
There's the 91 yard, but he also ran down another one before where it was, double coverage, and he was able to knock down a deep bomb. And Jimmy Ward making plays all over the field too. It's very promising, and it's also, that's part of the reason where I was kind of saying, like, it's not going to be as big of a problem with the cornerback issues, because you have those 2 safeties there. The problem becomes more if one of those guys gets hurt, and that's where it gets a little bit more concerning. But if those guys are in the majority of the time, I feel a lot more comfortable, especially given how strong the front 7 has been.
Oh yeah, well, and Jimmy Ward had that touchdown stop against Jalen Hurts where he was getting ready to walk the ball in, and he made sure that he didn't. So yeah, I think this defense played excellent. I guess for me, we'll talk about corners later, because that's obviously a big area of concern. That's the biggest sore thumb of really the defense. The other thing, though, that I think is concerning is the 49ers run defense in that they don't
Yeah,
have one. They were allowing
yeah, it's
5
it.
yards per carry
Yeah,
yesterday, and against the Lions, when they knew the Lions were pretty much just going to be running the ball, the Lions were running the ball as well. So then I start thinking about their matchups in the next couple of weeks, right? Think about dealing with Arizona. Think about dealing with Green Bay. 49ers can't stop the run.
yeah. It's main for me. I think it's mainly. Sorry to cut you off there. For me, it's mainly like the edge guys keeping those contains because I think like
Okay.
handing off to the running backs, especially against Arizona, I don't think their like running backs like rushing attack is going to be as
No. But what Kyler's going to be doing in terms of threatening them and just moving around in terms of that mobility, I think I just don't know. And we saw Jalen Hurts once he was able to get rolling a little bit yesterday. And once they allowed him to use his zone read in the fourth quarter, he looked great to me. I mean, he looked really effective against the 49ers. So I guess for me, it's that they haven't solved their problem of dealing with these mobile quarterbacks, these dual threat guys, but then they have this new problem where they can't contain guys, like you said, in order to stuff the run. And we thought Javon Kinlaw would improve that, but I mean, it wasn't crazy improved. And yeah, I just wonder if this defense can sell out to stop the run if they need to. I just don't know if they can, and they haven't really proven it so far. So if we're looking, especially next week against Green Bay, obviously Aaron Rodgers is such a threat. But if you can slow down Aaron Jones, you could potentially survive a game against Aaron Rodgers with his
yeah.
speed being
And
what it
I
is.
thought Kinlaw, I thought he played relatively well yesterday. He had the
Bro,
block,
yeah, the block
uh,
was
field
his
goal,
best
which was
play
very
offensively.
impressive.
Yeah,
But yeah, and I think it's just I think he's gonna be more of like a continuity. I don't know if it's much of a continuity thing, but I think you weren't expecting the run defense albums to be solved just like that. Um, yeah, and like Swan Song just mentioned, he's just a presence. Like he's just a very large human being that is gonna help with that. And yeah, that'll be interesting to see. The running attack, I think, is more gonna be with the mobile quarterbacks and keeping the outside contained. But yeah, the 5 yards to carry though is a bit concerning. So hopefully they can clean that up soon.
yeah, for sure. And I want to switch over here back to offense because I want to talk about Debo Samuel a little bit more. We covered him earlier, but let's talk about this for Debo Samuel. I don't think he's going to continue quite on the pace he's been on these first 2 games. I think he's going to have an excellent season. I just don't think he's going to be averaging 140 yards per game. But I guess moving forward, should Debo Samuel be the number 1 pass catcher for the 49ers this season? I mean, I put wide receiver 1 is the topic down here, right? But now I'm starting to question if should Debo just get all the targets on this team? Should he be number 1 in targets?
I don't know about that. I like it's not for like production reasons because he can produce on that kind of volume, but can he produce on that volume throughout the entire year? I don't know. Being more susceptible, like he could be more susceptible to injury on the other side. Like last year was a lot more because they were running him into the ground and doing a lot more with him in the running game. But in the passing game, can he sustain all those targets and catches throughout the year and all that wear and tear? Maybe we'll see. But I think production wise, yes, on like a more regulated scale. But I think other guys need to start stepping up,
For
and
sure.
and part of it could be just like they need to get more targets to those guys, like getting targets to IU, getting targets to Kittle,
Sherfield to Jennings.
Sherifield, like and like even guys like Juszczyk or Dwelly or Jennings or those guys, like having a more balanced attack. That's where I think they kind of missed Raheem Mostert too. Like he was a really good receiving back that they could go to. Uh, but yeah, volume. I think production wise he can be, but it's a lot better if he's more of like that underrated. Like kind of like how he was used in 2019 when Emmanuel Sanders and Kittle were there, there wasn't as much pressure to get him the ball.
Right. And that's, I guess, my worry, going forward for Debo is he looked excellent against the Eagles and the Lions, but how is he going to play against Jair Alexander next week, right? I don't know if they can survive with Debo, not just being the number one pass catcher, but being pretty much the only pass catcher. I mean, really, through a few games, he has 15 catches. I would really question how many other pass catchers on the team have, even close to that. I mean, obviously no one does, but with Debo, once teams, understand what's been going on this season, once they see, Ayuk not getting as many balls, Kittle not getting as many balls, will teams be able to kind of zero in on Debo? I guess that's my concern.
Yeah.
And,
I think it becomes too predictable if he becomes wide receiver one.
Exactly. You don't have that balance attack like you're talking about. You want Kittle to get more targets. You want Ayuk to get more targets because you need to spread the ball around the field, and you need to threaten teams in multiple ways rather than just Debo Samuel. Because as things stand right now, Packers are going to zero in on Debo. I mean, that's who they're going to be paying a ton of attention to when they play them on Sunday night.
Well, and maybe they're like with the Kittle thing, maybe they're not getting as much targets to him because maybe they're focusing in on him.
Maybe.
Right. Maybe they're looking just to,
But then if they are, you got to get more balls to Ayuk. The Ayuk to only have one of the pass catchers, have the majority of targets by far and away, and it's like not even close. To me, that's the issue. It's that you're not spreading the ball around more.
Mm-hmm. I think you can't run him into the ground the same way you ran him into the ground last year with the running game.
No.
Because you can't afford to lose him.
No, you can't. I mean, clearly, if the 49ers lost Debo, things would be ugly. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about another wide receiver on this team. Let's talk about Brandon Ayuk. I wouldn't classify myself as a Brandon Ayuk fan necessarily, but I love watching the guy play. I was very high on him like many other people were going into this season. He has one target or two targets.
He has one
catch for 6 yards. I guess the issue for me here is for Kyle to say he's not in the doghouse and for the 49ers to play it off as, last week as, it was a hamstring thing, or Trent Sherfield is just playing so darn well. He's just ahead of Ayuk in the depth chart. Like, I just don't buy any of that. I'm sorry, because it doesn't quite logically make sense. I think there's something else going on here where Ayuk must have had some personality thing or some off the field thing with the 49ers where they were clearly not happy with what he's been doing, because even going back to last season, Vinny, they would manufacture targets for Ayuk. They would find any way they could just to get the ball in his hands, especially behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, I remember how active they would use, or how active he was in that motion game, and just moving all the pieces all over the chessboard. They're just not doing that with Ayuk anymore. They're not making that same effort that they made last year to get him the ball. Even when Debo was playing, they would make an effort to get him the ball. Even the game where we saw all three, Debo, Kittle, and Ayuk play, they made more of an effort to get him the ball. So for them to just not make that effort at all, to me, it's curious. I think there has to be some bigger reason that we don't know about for this to be going on, or maybe he's more hurt than we thought. And I get that Kyle Shanahan doesn't have to answer to the media. He doesn't have to answer to the fans, but it's frustrating to have Brandon Ayuk do this over and over. And if this is going to be Brandon Ayuk for the rest of the season, why wouldn't Brandon Ayuk request a trade? I mean, honestly, if this is how the 49ers are going to treat him, there are plenty of other teams that could use Brandon Ayuk's services. So moving forward, you just got to get Ayuk involved. Like, he wasn't even taking punt returns for the most part yesterday. It was a lot of Sanu.
Well, that's the interesting thing. He took one. He kind of lost the ball in the sun.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a thing where, like, he is struggling a little bit. Maybe it's I don't know what to make of it all, honestly.
But Vinny, if he is struggling, get him the ball behind the line of scrimmage. Give him an end around. Give him a jet sweep. There are ways to manufacture touches for him.
Yeah, Yeah, because he did like in the preseason though, he did drop a few balls and
He
that he should have caught, and I think he did have his struggles. Like in training camp, he looked, from what we heard and saw, he looked phenomenal. So like, and part of it too, like, is like maybe there's just a better, like, it seems like Jimmy's guy is Debo. Maybe Trey's guy is Ayuk, because maybe that's just something to look into. Like Ayuk, like we saw a lot more of him working out with Trey
no,
this
for
offseason
sure.
than he did with Jimmy. And I don't know what to make of all of it, honestly.
Yeah, well, and with the way they divvied up the snaps, they haven't demoted Brandon Ayuk at all. Last game against the Eagles, he had like 38 snaps. The next leading pass catcher was at 24, Trent Sherfield. So they didn't bench him for Trent Sherfield. It's just a matter of them not getting Ayuk the ball. I mean, because we've seen this team's ability to get players the ball when they need to. Kyle Shanahan goes out of his way to get specific players with the ball in their hands, and
He's
he
been doing it for
hasn't shown
Debo.
up. Yeah, he's been doing it for Debo. He hasn't done anything for Ayuk so far. That's the strange part about all this, because Ayuk,
Yeah,
even if you're gonna say it's due to the drops, like I just said, give him those end arounds, give him those jet sweeps. He's really successful with the ball in his hands in those type of plays we
yeah,
see.
because he made a great
So
catch yesterday. That was a really good catch
absolutely,
on that third round, on that third down. Excuse me.
yeah. And if Jimmy would have hit him where he needed to on that other third down, he would have made a great catch, a nice possession catch that the 49ers would have needed. So it's frustrating, and honestly, if the person who should be frustrated the most, in my opinion, is Brandon Ayuk, because unless he did something, I just don't understand this situation. It's still really confusing, and for anyone to tell me that he's not in the doghouse, you don't know that. I don't think anyone knows at this point, and I think for
Yeah,
people to have an absolute certain, like, oh, he's hurt, or oh, he's in the doghouse, or oh,
yeah,
this or oh, that, we just don't know right now. We
yeah.
don't.
And the thing for me too, like, I think we said it last week. This isn't a Pettis situation. This is
No.
not it. No, he's, like you mentioned, he played 38 snaps. Pettis wasn't even getting snaps like in that 2019 year. So, and like you saw, like, you can see the talent gap. As fast and as good of a route runner Dante Pettis is, because he's actually not a bad player. Like, people think he was terrible. He's actually not a bad player. He's not on the level of Brandon Ayuk.
No. No.
So yeah,
And Ayuk has physical skill sets and gifts that
like last year against the Eagles. I'm sorry, Pettis isn't hurdling that guy.
he isn't
He's
hurdling
not.
that guy.
Like, you
Yeah.
don't just do that, and like, you don't just have that player and be like, oh, I'm just not gonna give him the ball because I don't feel like it. Like, there's clearly it
No,
feels to me at least that there's something going on behind the scenes that we don't know.
for sure. And you know what?
And
Maybe part of it too is that Jimmy being at quarterback, really, because think
yeah,
about last year, right? You barely played any games with Jimmy. I think he played maybe 2 or 3 total. So maybe this is a chemistry thing too. I mean, we just
yeah,
don't know.
maybe it's not all on Kyle here. Maybe, like,
No.
it's just a trust thing with Jimmy, and that, like you mentioned, that
Yeah,
chemistry. Maybe
yeah.
it's just not getting. Maybe it's who
And
knows, and it's hard to
and
really say. We're just speculating at this
that's
point.
the
Like,
thing I was gonna say. We're just speculating. With Ayuk, we just don't know, and until something else happens, we're just not going to get many answers, it seems like. So for people to definitively say they know what's going on with Brandon Ayuk, I call BS. But
yeah,
let's move on to the last thing I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about the corners for the 49ers. I think it's the biggest worry of this team, I would say. I think that's fair. I think it's probably the weakest position group on the team. But um, I guess, do you feel like this cornerback room is potentially the kind of the biggest thing holding them back this season?
um, I don't know, because like I mentioned, it depends
I,
on
I, I
if
think they're holding their
Diamador.
defense back, Vinny. Let me put it to you this
Yeah,
way.
no, yeah,
Let's separate
yeah,
the team from the defense. Do you think
yeah.
they're
Well,
holding the
yeah. I mean,
defense
I
back?
think if you're the worst position group on the field, you're
You're
going to be
holding.
the holding them back just inherently. And I think in that sense, yeah, because I think they are the least depth and least talented position group on the team. And not in the list on the defense, but Diamador Lenore looked really like I had on the other pod that I do with Niner Nate, we had Grant on, and he said that this week against Devontae Smith was going to be a really big test, and he outside of that one big 91-yard chunk play, I think he only gave up like 20 yards,
Yeah,
which
he gave
he
up
was
4 on 11 targets. He gave up 4 catches, 111 yards, and that first big one was the 91-yard one. So
so like take
20 yards, 3 catches.
Yeah, and again, it's Jalen Hurts. Maybe you have a little bit of question marks about him as a quarterback, and maybe these next few weeks are going to be really big tests, are going to be the true test for these cornerbacks against one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. So maybe that's a bigger test, but yeah, I think they're holding the defense back just because they're the least deep group. Not to say that some of these other guys can produce. Like, it was unfortunate to see Ambry Thomas as a healthy scratch yesterday, and Josh Norman, I thought he played pretty well. Those 2 PI calls were kind of ticky-tack. I think they could have gone either way. Just didn't go his way. But most of the time, they didn't really target him that much.
Which was
and
weird.
then
That seems like more of a rookie head coach thing, or
yeah.
a
So
young
maybe
quarterback.
LaFleur next week is just going to be putting Devontae Adams on Josh Norman the entire game and just go at that matchup. Maybe. We don't know.
And with Lenore, I wanted to say this with him. I think he did an okay job, actually. I don't know if he did as great as a job. I don't quite agree with you on that. I think to me the issue with Lenore is he plays really aggressive. He plays really well. But, man, he's going to get beat a lot deep this season. I mean, twice we saw him almost beat deep. And really the only reason he didn't get beat the other time is because the wide receiver stepped out of bounds just by an inch. And with Lenore, right, he's been really good breaking up passes, intermediate, like I said, but that long field, that downfield, being able to keep wide receivers from beating you over the top and just outrunning you, he just isn't quite there yet on that. And I think we're gonna see a lot of situations where Lenore is running 5 yards behind a receiver as he catches a 35-yard pass, and he's chasing him down to try and stop a touchdown, but he won't.
Yeah.
And I think that's my biggest concern with Lenore. It really has been. And with Josh Norman, he's okay, man. We haven't seen a lot from him.
It wasn't anything special yesterday. He was like, oh my God, like he's playing like Jason Verrett.
No, definitely not. And with Lenore, it didn't feel like that either. So I guess, is the cornerback room holding them back? Absolutely, sure. But this is a problem that the 49ers should have been well aware of. And the fact that, like you just said, Ambry Thomas was a healthy scratch, the fact that they haven't been able to invest well and get the production they need out of the corner position is the most concerning thing, really, is that they do. I mean, they don't invest as much as, maybe some Baltimore Ravens type teams do invest in corner, right? But for what they've invested in corner with Ambry, with some of the picks they've used, it hasn't really worked out that well. And I guess it's frustrating for me to see them. I don't want to say surprised by this, but the fact that they were, going and signing Drake Kirkpatrick and all these players, clearly they knew this is their weakness once Jason Verrett went down. And they can't. I think the thing now is they just can't do anything about it. There's no trade that they can make to fix this. They should try and maybe draft someone next year, but they don't have the draft capital to, go and grab someone at the trade deadline this season. At least I don't think so.
Well, there was talks about Dantzler, right? The Vikings guy, and potentially, I mean, you'd have to give a little bit more up. I guess it's one of your points, but like CJ Henderson, does he become available? And so it's a tough thing, but it seemed like you mentioned, it seemed they were kind of prepared to eventually invest in cheaper cornerback options.
Yeah, but they should have invested more. I mean, quite honestly, the fact that Ambry Thomas was a healthy scratch to me is very concerning, and that they just haven't been able to give it the position right. And the fact that they were relying on Jason Verrett to be healthy, the fact that they went into the season with Mosley and Verrett as number one, number two, and they both haven't they both miss games, or Brett's out for the season. Mosley's missing time. It's not surprising that this happened 2 games into the season for me. The more concerning thing is that the 49ers haven't done more to try and shore up the corner position, like drafting Asante Samuel in the 2nd round. So, with Lenore moving forward, the real test for me is these next 3 weeks. Really, it'll be really interesting to see how he matches up against Green Bay, Seattle, Arizona. Same thing with Josh Norman. I want to see if they're going to play any other outside corners, quite frankly. I just wasn't super impressed by Josh Norman. Like I said, with Lenore, he's been good, but at the same time, there is that concern of he is going to give up that big play every once in a while. And you could there's a lot of touchdowns you could give up because Lenore.
You could just put your speed guy on him, just have him go over the top.
Yeah.
Like Tyler Lockett with Russell Wilson's deep ball against Lenore could be a problem potentially.
Yeah, some against Aaron Rodgers next week.
So
yeah. Well, yeah, it is really concerning. I think it's the biggest thing holding them back. But like I said, this is their weakness all along. So I don't know.
That's kind of my point. I think it's hard to really say if they're really holding them back. If we already knew that they were going to be the weakest part, maybe like you mentioned, should they have invested more earlier? Maybe. Yeah. Should they have be more proactive about it, like instead of reactive? And maybe this is the year, like that's going to be an indicator about that heading into next year. Like maybe they invest more now. So
yeah, but I mean, it feels like we're saying that every offseason with the 49ers, right? Yeah. I mean, so I don't really know how much. I think they should. I think they will. I don't know how much I quite believe it though. But I want to end there for today, everybody. I'll be back Wednesday afternoon with Amin around 2 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. maybe. We'll let you know. We'll keep you guys updated on that. Vinny and I will be back every Monday. We're shooting for 2 p.m.s every Monday Eastern time, 11 a.m. Western time. We'll be on Vinny's channel next week. Make sure you guys go over, subscribe, check that out. I have all this stuff linked in the description below. Have a great week, everybody. Enjoy your Monday Night Football tonight, and have a good one.